My name is Ariana Bennett. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of how I realized I was nothing more than a bank account to the people I called family, and how I finally decided to close that account for good. It started on a Saturday afternoon. The kind of gray, drizzling day you'd expect in Oregon, where the clouds always seem a little too heavy and the air always smells like wet pavement. I had just gotten back from a work trip to Seattle and was doing what I always did. Laundry, prepping Monday's calendar, checking my budget, making sure my automatic monthly transfer of $1,120 to my parents had cleared. Had, of course. It always did. Like clockwork. Like a ritual. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment near Forest Park in Portland. It's not lavish, but it's clean, organized, like me. I'm a financial manager for a mid-size investment firm. I manage risk for a living. I'm the kind of person who balances her checkbook down to the penny, who files taxes early, who reads the fine print. So it's almost funny how I didn't see the biggest betrayal of my life coming. Not from a stranger, but from the two people who raised me. See, I'd always believed in taking care of family. My parents, Stephen and Marlene Bennett, live in Salem in the old house I grew up in. My dad used to be a mechanic. My mom worked part-time at a craft store. Neither of them ever made much. And from the day I got my first real paycheck after college, I started sending money home. Felt right. They'd done their best to raise me. It was my turn now. But I didn't realize I was the only one turning. Brandon is my younger brother. 4 years younger. No degree, no career. He's always figuring things out. He opened a vintage clothing store once. I gave him the $10,000 startup loan. He never paid it back. When it folded a year later, he shrugged and said he wasn't cut out for retail. Then he moved back in with mom and dad like nothing had happened. Rent-free. Responsibility-free. I, on the other hand, was working 60-hour weeks. I paid for mom's back surgery. I covered over $8,000 in plumbing repairs when the pipes in the Salem house burst. I replaced the roof. Every month, I sent enough to cover groceries, insurance, and part of the mortgage. No questions asked. No complaints. Just obedience. They called me strong, independent, capable. That's what Mom always said. Ariana, honey, you're our rock. You've got everything handled. But rocks don't feel. And that's exactly what I had become. Cold, silent, unacknowledged. The pattern went on for years. I thought I could live with it. I even convinced myself I wanted to. Until the day everything snapped. That Saturday, Mom called and asked if I could drive down to Salem to help her sort through some bank paperwork. She said it was something about refinancing. I didn't think twice. I packed my laptop, hopped into my Corolla, and made the hour-long drive south. It was routine by now. I'd sign something, explain something, fix something, then drive back. Alone. When I got there, the house looked the same. A little more faded, maybe. The porch sagging just slightly. Brandon's car, a black Mustang he definitely hadn't earned, was parked out front. I walked in, and Mom greeted me with her usual nervous smile and a glass of iced tea. She gestured to a stack of papers on the dining table. "Can you look at these for me, honey? I don't understand any of it." I sat down, opened my laptop, and started scanning the documents. Some were old tax forms. Others were utility bills. Nothing unusual. And then I saw it. A folder marked with a blue sticker. Last Will and Testament. Stephen and Marlene Bennett. Froze. I hadn't known they had a will. I hesitated, then opened it. Maybe I shouldn't have. But something, curiosity, instinct, fear, made me read it. I wish I hadn't. We leave all assets, including the house in Salem, savings accounts, life insurance, and land rights to our son, Brandon Bennett. Just like that. No mention of me. Not even a gesture. Not a thank you. Not a line of gratitude. Just nothing. Except one final sentence at the bottom, like a knife to the chest. We love both our children equally but believe this is necessary for family stability. Necessary. Equal love. Stability. I read that line over and over again, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. I had poured years of my life, my health, my savings into that house. Into them. And they gave everything to the one person who had never once lifted a finger for them. The room felt like it was tilting. I stood up, clutching the papers, walked into the kitchen where Mom was rinsing vegetables at the sink. "When did you write this?" asked. She looked startled. I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes before she masked it. "Oh, it's just. It's been a while. We wanted to have everything sorted. You didn't think to tell me." She dried her hands and stepped closer, her voice soft like a lullaby. "Ariana, you have a good job. Your own apartment. Brandon. He still needs help. We're just trying to give him a future." I stared at her. "His future? You gave him everything. He doesn't need to stand up. He has a whole house to lie on. Ariana. Don't overreact." I turned and walked out the back door, where Dad was fiddling with a porch light. He looked up and smiled. "You leaving already? Stay for dinner." I held up the will. "Did you sign this?" His face froze. Yeah. "But it's not what you think. I read it." He took a step forward, reaching out like he could undo the truth with a touch. "You don't understand." "No," I said. "I finally do." Got into my car. The drizzle had turned into a steady rain. As I pulled away from the house, a strange numbness settled into my bones. Not sadness. Not rage. Just hello. They didn't forget me. They had erased me on purpose. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to go back. The rain hadn't stopped by the time I pulled into my Portland apartment complex. It was just past 9 p.m., and the city lights were blurred through the water running down my windshield like the tears I couldn't shed. I sat in the car for a long time. Engine off. Keys in hand. Will in the passenger seat like a ghost. There's a moment in grief, not the kind you feel after death, but the kind you feel after betrayal, where everything becomes still, as if the world pauses just long enough for you to realize something is over. Not physically, not tangibly, but emotionally, spiritually. A cord had been cut. I walked inside and didn't bother turning on the lights. My apartment smelled faintly of rosemary from the candle I had forgotten to blow out before driving to Salem. That same candle, now a tiny pool of hardened wax, flickered softly for hours longer than it should have, just like I had. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sunday mornings were supposed to be for rest, brunch with friends, errands. But I wasn't in the mood for eggs or laughter. I opened my laptop and scrolled through the spreadsheet where I kept all my personal financial logs. Line by line, I tallied the transfers I had made to my parents over the last 7 years. $1,120 a month. $13,440 a year. $94,080 in total. And that didn't even include the $8,200 for plumbing, $10,000 for Brandon's failed store, or the $5,600 hospital bill for mom's surgery. By the time I finished, the number read $123,880. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at that number until it stopped looking like money and started looking like pieces of myself. My sleep, my energy, my youth. It was around noon when I picked up the phone and called Mom. I didn't know what I wanted to say exactly. Closure. An apology. Some shred of decency. She picked up on the third ring. "Ariana," she said too cheerfully. "I was just thinking of you." "Mom, I need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No sugar-coating. No pretending. She sighed, and I could hear her settling into the kitchen chair. "Go ahead. Why did you write me out of the will?" Another pause. Then, "It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me. Explain why I'm not worth even a line in your future, even after everything I've done." "Ariana," she said softly. "You're strong. You're independent. Brandon. He's struggling." "Mom," I cut in. "He's not struggling. He's refusing. There's a difference." Her voice turned defensive. "He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. Or did you forget that part?" The silence on the line felt like a void. Then she said something that stuck to my ribs like a splinter. "I was afraid you'd leave us if we gave you part of it. Brandon's here. You're not. We just wanted to keep him close. You didn't lose me because I moved away," I said coldly. "You lost me because you never held on to me." A sob. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, like someone who had finally run out of lies. "I looked into buying you and Dad extra insurance last year," I continued. "I stayed up late researching retirement funds for you. I was planning to surprise you on your anniversary by paying off the rest of the mortgage." She whispered, "I didn't know. You didn't want to know." Hung up. Afterward, I sat on my couch for hours, legs curled under me, staring at the same wall I had painted pale blue to calm my nerves. It didn't help. Nothing did. That night, I opened my banking app and canceled every recurring transfer tied to their account. Then I closed the secondary joint account they'd had access to. I didn't notify them. I didn't need to. They would find out soon enough. And they did. The first message came Monday morning, just as I was walking into a regional meeting. Dad's text. "Ari, the property tax is due. Can you front it like usual?" "No, hello. No, how are you? Just need." I replied. "I think Brandon can handle it. The house belongs to him now." 5 minutes later, Mom called. I ignored it. She called again. Then a text. "Ariana, don't do this. We don't have enough. Brandon's still looking for a job." Still looking. That phrase struck me harder than I expected. I replied, "This isn't a misunderstanding. You made a decision. I'm just respecting it. If Brandon deserves everything, then he can start taking responsibility too." I put the phone down, my hands ice cold. I wasn't shaking from rage. I was shaking from release. From the heavy relief of finally putting the weight down. That night after dinner, I got a message from Brandon. "You're really going to abandon them over a piece of paper?" I didn't respond right away. I went on my evening walk, the streets still wet from a light drizzle, and thought about all the times he had borrowed money, dodged accountability, and somehow still been called the baby. I thought about my birthdays spent alone, my holidays split between fixing pipes and baking pies, while Brandon slept in. When I got home, I replied, "It's not about the paper. It's about never truly being part of the family. Now, at least I'm free." He texted back instantly. "You're so selfish. Family is about getting through hard times together." I stared at his message for a long time, then typed, "Family is about sharing, not exploiting. I've carried everything alone for too long. Now it's your turn to learn what hard times really mean." There was no reply. For a while I hoped that would be the end of it, that they would quietly accept I was gone. But I had given them too much credit, because 3 days later I got an email from the bank. There had been an attempted withdrawal from that old joint account in Salem. They tried to take out $4,200, well over the remaining balance. An overdraft alert had been triggered. I called immediately and revoked all access. The banker on the line, a woman named Holly who had a soothing tone, asked if I wanted to add any new users to the account. "No," I said. "There's no one left I trust." Minutes later, Dad called. I let it go to voicemail. Then the text. "You really want us to lose the house? You won't be able to live with yourself." I stared at it, unmoved. Then typed back slowly. "Now you'll just have to take care of it yourselves. I'm not your bank. And I'm not the daughter you only remember when it's time to pay a bill." For the first time in my life I felt untied. I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear. And clarity is something they never gave me until now. I thought silence would be the end of it. That they'd back off, sit with their decisions, maybe even reflect. But my family doesn't know how to sit with silence. They treat it like a broken appliance, something to fix, even if they're the ones who broke it. And if they can't fix it, they replace the truth with noise. It started with a Facebook post. Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee on my tiny balcony, overlooking Forest Park. The trees were gold and crimson with October. A crisp breeze carried the scent of pine and early rain. For a brief moment I felt peace. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Madison, my best friend from college, now a lawyer in Seattle. "Are you okay? I just saw your mom's post on Facebook. It's a lot." My stomach dropped. I hadn't touched Facebook in months. I only kept the account active to stay loosely in touch with a few old friends. I opened it, hesitating, like walking into a house that might be on fire. And there it was. A long post from my mother, Marlene Bennett, public and already shared 43 times. It's heartbreaking as parents to see your child turn their back on you over money. We sacrificed our whole lives for her. And now, when we need her the most, she coldly cuts us off. Our home is at risk of foreclosure, but she's too busy living her fancy life to care. The comments were even worse. "Kids these days are heartless. If my daughter did this, I'd be ashamed. Where did you go wrong raising someone like that?" And of course, Brandon had shared it too, adding, "Family is about love, not calculations. I'm not perfect, but I never turned my back on the people who raised me." Dad kept it simple, a status that stung more than I expected. Some people think success means forgetting where they came from. It's only when we grow old and weak that we realize not every child we raised is truly ours. I read it again and again. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because I could. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were rewriting the story. Painting me as a villain to a digital crowd that had no idea I had kept that house standing for a decade. That I had been the silent pillar while they played favorites. Could have ignored it. Let them spit poison into the wind and pretend it didn't touch me. But I had done that my whole life. Swallowed lies for the sake of peace. Peace that never came. So I logged in. I opened a new post. And I told my story. I never thought I'd post something like this. But it seems my family has chosen to share only half the truth. So here's the part they left out. I wrote it all. Every monthly transfer, the surgery, the business loan, the late-night emergency calls. I described Brandon's complete lack of responsibility. His designer shoes. His jobless years. His manipulation masked as misfortune. I didn't insult them. I didn't name-call. I just laid it bare. I didn't abandon my family. I simply refused to continue being used. I ended with a question. Not for them but for everyone else. Would you accept being treated like a walking wallet by the people who claim to love you? Or would you finally say, enough? Then I hit post and closed the laptop. By the time I made lunch, the post had 90 likes and 23 comments. Friends, old classmates, even distant cousins began messaging me. One by one, people I hadn't heard from in years wrote things like, "I saw this coming for a long time. I always thought it was unfair how much they leaned on you. You're brave for speaking up. So many of us are the responsible child. Thank you for giving us a voice." I didn't cry. But I felt something deeper, validation. Not because they agreed with me, but because for once, I wasn't invisible. And then came the storm. My parents, perhaps realizing their narrative was unraveling, doubled down. My mother posted a photo of us from 2001. Me at 15, Brandon at 11, the three of us in matching Christmas sweaters. The caption read, "Some things only live on in memories. We forgive, but we don't forget." Brandon left a comment, still hoping one day she finds her way back to us. Before it's too late. And Dad posted again. "You never stop being a parent. Even when your child stops being your child." They weren't speaking to me. They were performing. For sympathy, for attention, for anyone who might keep feeding their victimhood. But I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to anymore. My truth was out. The silence that once suffocated me had been broken. And with it, the chains of guilt I had carried since I was 23. Instead, I made myself dinner. Real dinner. Not leftovers or takeout. I lit a candle. Played music. I sat at my own table and toasted no one but myself. To surviving. Clarity. To letting go. The following week I took time off work. Not for stress, not for recovery, but to move. I found a smaller place near the Willamette River. Cozy studio with big windows and a view of the water. The rent was cheaper, the space quieter. Felt like a reset. I donated old furniture. Threw away things I had been keeping, just in case. Just in case Brandon needed a couch. Just in case Mom visited. Just in case Dad dropped by. Those cases no longer existed. And in that empty space, I found room to write again. I started journaling, something I hadn't done in over a decade. I wrote about guilt, about love, about the confusing ache of wanting a family that never truly wanted you back unless you served a purpose. I wrote about Brandon's smirks and Mom's silent expectations. About being called strong as an excuse to ignore my needs. About the quiet, daily grief of being forgotten in plain sight. I let it all out, not for them but for me. And I promised myself, no more obligations disguised as love. I said no to dinner invites I didn't want. No to work emails past 7 p.m. No to just one more favor from people who vanished after the favor was done. Saying no, it turned out, felt a lot like saying yes to myself. But just when I thought it was all behind me, the doorbell rang. Saturday morning. Same drizzle. Same Oregon gray. I peeked through the peephole. It was them. All three. Brandon. No warning. No call. No apology. Just three ghosts from the past standing at my present-day doorstep. And I knew right then. They weren't here to make peace. They were here to take more. I didn't open the door right away. I stood still, heart pounding, breath shallow, staring through the peephole as my past tried to knock its way back into my present. They had come uninvited, unannounced, like a storm that refuses to stay in the forecast. Mom was at the front, arms folded across her chest, her mouth pursed in that familiar mixture of forced calm and underlying drama. Dad stood slightly behind her, hunched a little more than I remembered. His cap pulled low over his brow. And Brandon, hands in his pockets, leaning against the railing like he had nothing to do with any of this. Like he was the victim. They didn't knock politely. They pounded. Ariana! Mom's voice rang through the hallway, shrill and too loud for a Saturday morning in an apartment building. I took a deep breath, stepped back from the door and waited. I know you're in there, she continued, her voice rising. Don't make a scene. This is your family. I almost laughed. Now she was worried about scenes. After dragging my name through Facebook like a headline in a gossip column. Mom, I called through the door, voice firm. This isn't the time or the place. Dad's voice came next, lower, rougher. Ari. We need to talk. Face to face. No, I replied. We've already said everything. There was a pause. I could hear them shuffling. Then Brandon's voice. The same lazy drawl I remembered from every half-hearted excuse he'd ever given. Seriously? You're going to ignore your own family now? After everything? I opened the door, not to welcome them in, but because I was done hiding. They startled slightly, like they hadn't expected me to actually confront them. I didn't move aside. I stood squarely in the doorway, blocking the entrance with my body. If you came to guilt me, I said calmly, don't bother. I've heard it all. Mom's eyes were already glassy. We didn't come to guilt you. We came to talk. That's all. Then talk. I folded my arms, mirroring hers. From out here. Ariana. Dad stepped forward, his voice heavy. We're not here to fight. We're here because things are falling apart. A house. Brandon's job search. Cut him off. Brandon's job search. He's been searching for nearly a decade. I think we both know it's more like sightseeing. Brandon stepped forward, his eyes flashing. I never asked you to do anything, okay? You chose to play hero. I turned to him. No, you didn't ask. Because you didn't have to. You knew Mom and Dad would ask for you. And I'd say yes. That was the unspoken agreement. I carry the weight, you get the reward. He scoffed. You think money makes you better than me? No, I said. But responsibility does. Mom stepped in, her voice trembling. We're a family, Ariana. We carry the load together. Exactly, I said. But I carried it alone. For years. And when it came time to show even a fraction of appreciation, you erased me from the future. It was just a will, she said weakly. We can change it. But you didn't plan to. I stared her down. You made your decision. Now I've made mine. Dad exhaled slowly, as if trying to stay calm. You're acting like a stranger. No, I said. I've always been treated like one. I was just too desperate to admit it. For a moment, the three of them stood there, speechless. And then Mom's face changed. Softened, but not from understanding. From manipulation. Your father's blood pressure is spiking. He's not well. We've had to cut meals to pay for medicine. You're really okay just walking away. Clenched my jaw. I didn't walk away. I was pushed. Every time you prioritized Brandon, every time you dismissed me with "you're strong, you'll manage." You were pushing. Ariana, Brandon muttered, stepping forward. You're making this bigger than it is. No, Brandon. You think it's small because it never cost you anything. He looked down, but not out of shame, out of boredom. Like I was a lecture he didn't want to sit through. I'm done playing the villain in your version of this story, I said. I'm not the selfish one here. I'm the one who sacrificed silently until there was nothing left but resentment. Mom's voice cracked. You're my daughter. I love you. You love what I gave you, I said. Not who I was when I wasn't giving. I took a deep breath. Now I want you to leave. And if you ever decide to come back, come with accountability, not expectation. They hesitated, unsure. Brandon turned and muttered something under his breath, starting down the hallway. Dad followed slowly. But Mom lingered. I'm scared, Ariana, she said softly. Scared of losing you forever. You didn't lose me over money, I said gently. You lost me when you made me invisible. I closed the door, quietly, with intention. There was no shouting, no slam, just silence. This time not from being silenced but from finally choosing it. I leaned back against the door, my breath shaky but steadying. My phone buzzed in my hand. Text from Madison. Are you okay? I stared at it for a moment, then replied. Yeah, I think I finally am. But it wasn't over yet. 3 days later, the story took a turn I hadn't expected. One that proved my family wasn't just entitled. They were desperate. Because when manipulation fails, people start reaching for control. And I was about to find out just how far they were willing to go. They say silence is golden, but in my case it was just the calm before the next storm. I had expected a fight, but what I got instead was something far more dangerous. Desperation in disguise. 3 days after the doorstep confrontation, I received an alert from my bank. The subject line alone made my blood run cold. Suspicious activity detected on your joint account ending in 6417. My heart dropped. That account should have been closed. I immediately called the bank, hands trembling as I explained that the account had been deactivated and should no longer be accessible. The representative on the line confirmed the closure but added something I wasn't prepared for. There was an attempted withdrawal of $4,200 through an online banking login. It was flagged due to a password failure and location mismatch. We've secured the account, but we'd recommend filing a fraud alert just to be safe. Location mismatch. That meant someone had tried logging in from a different city. Salem. I didn't need to guess who it was. I ended the call and sat frozen on my couch, the reality sinking in. Not only had they tried to guilt me, then confront me at my home, they were now trying to reach into my accounts. And for what? Money. Or control. My fingers moved before my brain could catch up. I texted Dad. Did you or Mom try to access the old joint account? No response. So I messaged Brandon. Tell me you didn't try to steal from me. He read it almost instantly. The 3 dots appeared, paused, then disappeared. 5 minutes later I got a reply. Wow. Paranoid much? I don't even know how to log into your bank. Another lie. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the bank back, filed the fraud alert, then changed every password on every financial platform I had ever touched. I set up two-factor authentication, closed every shared access, shredded every document I had ever sent them, just in case. Felt dramatic, but also necessary. Still, nothing prepared me for what came next. The next morning, I received an email from HR at my firm. The subject line hit like a punch. Urgent. Inappropriate online post allegation. My chest tightened. Inside, there was a forwarded message. Someone had sent a screenshot of my Facebook post to the company's general inquiry email, claiming I had posted unprofessional and defamatory content about family and financial matters that reflected poorly on the company. It was anonymous, but I knew exactly where it came from. I scheduled a meeting with my manager, Olivia, and our legal liaison. I came prepared, with my original post, with my clean track record, with 7 years of spotless performance. Olivia looked at me across the conference table, brows furrowed but sympathetic. "This isn't a disciplinary hearing," she said. "We just want to understand what's going on." I explained everything, from the years of silent support to the will to the attempted withdrawal. I didn't cry. I didn't play the victim. I just told the truth. When I finished, Olivia sat back and sighed. "Honestly, I'd have done worse." The legal liaison nodded. "You're in the clear. We'll flag the complaint as a personal dispute and note that it has no bearing on your professional performance." I exhaled deeply for what felt like the first time in days. But the damage had already begun to ripple in other places. Because the person who sent that email wasn't trying to get me fired. They were trying to ruin my reputation. And it wasn't just inside my company. Later that day, a friend forwarded me a local Salem Facebook group thread. Mom had posted there too. Not by name but clearly about me. The post read, "Some children think money makes them moral. But when their elderly parents are in danger of losing their home, they choose to shame us online instead of helping like family should." The comments again were a minefield. "Sounds like another spoiled millennial. I'd be ashamed if my daughter did that. How ungrateful do you have to be to attack your own mother on social media?" The guilt that I had fought so hard to bury started to surface again. But this time I didn't run from it. I let it rise. I let myself feel the full weight of the manipulation. And then I released it. I wasn't going to let them poison my name while hiding behind the curtain of victimhood. So I made one final post. Unapologetic. Truthful. To anyone questioning my actions. I supported my parents financially for nearly a decade. I never asked for thanks. I did it because I believed that's what family does. But love that demands silence, sacrifice, and invisibility is not love. It's servitude. If standing up for myself makes me ungrateful in your eyes, that says more about your expectations than my actions. I won't engage in back and forth. But I will protect my name, my peace, and my boundaries. Loudly. And I logged out. For good. Let them talk. Let them twist the narrative to anyone who would listen. Because the people who truly mattered, the ones who had known me through college, through career, through life, started reaching out. One by one, I received messages of support. Not pity. Just clarity. Madison sent flowers. My college mentor left a voicemail. "Proud of you. Takes guts to walk away when the leash is made of guilt." Even Olivia, my manager, sent a short email. "You're stronger than most. If you ever want to lead a team, let's talk." But none of that compared to the message that came from someone unexpected. My Aunt Rachel, my dad's sister. Someone I hadn't spoken to in over 6 years. Her message read, "I saw what happened. I always suspected you were the one keeping that house afloat. I tried to speak up once years ago. Your mom shut me down. Said, Ariana's just good with money, she likes helping. I regret not pushing harder. If you ever need family that chooses you for who you are, not what you give, my door's always open." Cried that night. Not because I was weak, but because for once someone saw me. Not as the provider. Not as the responsible one. Just as a person. I didn't need the whole world to understand. I just needed one person to say, "I believe you." And for the first time in my adult life, I believed in myself too. But this journey wasn't done. Because sometimes peace isn't just found in walking away. Sometimes it comes from walking back with power, with purpose, and making sure your story ends the way you choose. And I was about to do exactly that. I never thought I'd say this, but silence wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. After weeks of online attacks, desperate texts, attempted account breaches, and unsolicited visits, I finally understood something so painfully obvious it made me laugh out loud in my kitchen. My parents didn't want me back. They wanted my compliance. And Brandon, he didn't want a sister. He wanted a financial safety net that looked too good to lose. But what they hadn't counted on was me waking up. It was early November, and the air in Portland had turned crisp enough to carry the promise of change. I had just brewed a pot of coffee when my phone buzzed with a notification from a law firm. First I thought it was spam. But when I opened the email, my breath caught. Subject: Notice of Financial Obligation. Property Title Transfer Inquiry. I read the words twice, then a third time, my eyes widening with every line. Apparently, my parents had attempted to include my name, without consent, on a pending loan application tied to the Salem house. The very same house that, according to their will, they had left entirely to Brandon. The paperwork they submitted listed me as a secondary guarantor. It was a strategic move. And illegal. They hadn't just tried to guilt me into submission. They were now trying to legally bind me to their sinking ship. I felt a fire ignite inside me. The kind I had always suppressed out of politeness, out of fear, out of being the good daughter. No more. Within an hour, I had scheduled a video call with Madison, my lawyer friend in Seattle. I sent her the documents, the will, screenshots of the Facebook posts, texts, everything. By that evening, she was drafting a cease and desist. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to take action. We filed a legal notice to the financial institution involved, warning them of the fraudulent use of my name and identity. I submitted sworn statements and requested a formal investigation into the matter. Madison connected me with a Portland-based lawyer who specialized in family financial abuse. It was the first time I had ever used the word abuse in relation to my family. But that's what it was. Not physical, not loud, but sustained. Systematic, designed to benefit one side while silencing the other. Within days, I received confirmation from the bank. The loan had been cancelled. The application flagged. My name removed. But the damage wasn't over. Because Brandon, clearly fed the news by our parents, texted me again. This time he didn't bother with pretense. "You really went and lawyered up. Over a technicality. You think this makes you look noble. It just makes you look petty." I stared at the message, my fingers curled tight around the phone. But I didn't reply. I let Madison handle it. And she did. She sent Brandon and my parents a formal letter outlining all legal boundaries. No unauthorized financial usage of my name, no defamatory public statements, and no further contact unless it was through counsel. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safety. Real safety. It wasn't just about cutting them off emotionally anymore. It was about protecting my life, my credit, my future. A week passed in silence. And then something strange happened. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Ariana." The woman's voice was soft, hesitant. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Dana. Dana Greenwell. I work at Rosewood Title Agency. I'm sorry for calling out of the blue. Your name came up in a very unusual situation." She explained that my parents had recently attempted to transfer partial property rights of the Salem house in my name. Again. Not for generosity. But so they could claim dual occupancy status for a local tax exemption. They were trying to exploit a legal loophole using my name. Again. Dana said she recognized the red flag from the previous flagged loan attempt. And out of professional courtesy and personal ethics, she wanted to confirm before moving forward. Thanked her. And I cried. Not because I was hurt, but because someone, finally, believed me without needing evidence of my suffering. That same evening I made a decision. I wasn't just going to protect myself. I was going to take back the narrative, for good. I opened my laptop and started writing a letter. Not to them. To everyone else. To the people who had watched my mother's Facebook posts, read the pity-driven guilt trips, nodded along to the fiction that I was some heartless daughter who turned her back. I didn't publish it on Facebook this time. I sent it to a local blog that highlighted real-life stories of family dynamics and personal justice. They titled the post, "The Daughter They Called Ungrateful, and the Truth They Never Told." It went viral within days. Thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. People from every walk of life, sharing their own stories of being the responsible one, the invisible child, the financial crutch. I read every comment, every message. One woman wrote, "This made me realize my entire relationship with my parents is built on guilt." Another said, "I haven't spoken to my brother in 10 years. He drained our parents and blamed me when I said no." A man wrote, "You're not selfish. You're the first brave one in the family." And for the first time I realized I wasn't alone. All those years I thought I was isolated in this pain. Turns out I was just one of many wearing the same invisible armor. The same week the blog post went viral, my parents went silent online. No more cryptic posts. No more guilt quotes. Just it. It was the loudest admission I'd ever received. They'd lost control of the story. And I had finally reclaimed my voice. But I wasn't done. There was still one last thing to do. Not to punish them, but to finally free myself completely. I always thought freedom would feel like celebration. Fireworks in my chest, champagne in my hands, some grand catharsis. But the truth, freedom felt quiet. Like waking up and realizing the weight on your chest was never yours to carry, and you finally laid it down. After the blog post went viral, after the cease and desist silenced the financial ambushes, after the online smear campaign collapsed under its own lies, I found myself sitting by the Willamette River one morning with a coffee in one hand and peace in the other. The war was over, but the healing was just beginning. A week after the silence settled, my doorbell rang. Not in desperation, not in fury, but with uncertainty. I looked through the peephole. My mother stood alone. No Brandon, no dad, just her, holding a small brown envelope in her hand and a face I hadn't seen in years, a face not painted with guilt trips or performance, just worn down, human. I opened the door, not fully, just enough to speak. She looked up with tired eyes. "I'm not here to ask for anything." I didn't say anything. She held out the envelope. "This was something your father and I wrote a few weeks ago. We didn't know how to send it. After everything, I just thought you should have it." Took it cautiously. She stepped back. "I won't take more of your time. I just wanted you to know. I read everything you wrote." Her voice cracked. "And I think it's time I stopped pretending I didn't know it was true." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. She nodded. Small gesture. Not of surrender but maybe remorse. And then she left. I waited until the door clicked shut, then sat down and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten. Something my father hadn't done in years. It read, "Ariana, we failed you. We didn't fail to love you. We failed to show it in the ways you deserved. I convinced myself that leaning on you was a compliment, that asking for help meant we trusted you the most, that saying you're strong would be enough to carry you through the times we ignored your needs. But strength without support isn't strength, it's survival. Your mother and I thought we were doing the best we could for both of you. We see now. We were doing what was easiest. You didn't owe us money, or patience, or silence, and yet you gave us all three. Brandon may have been the child we protected, but you were the one who protected us. We can't undo what we did, but we've updated the will. It's not about fairness anymore. It's about finally acknowledging the daughter who never asked to be a martyr. If you never call again, we'll understand. But we hope you do. Ed. There were tear stains on the paper. And for the first time in years, they weren't mine. I sat there a long time, holding that letter like it weighed more than gold. And maybe it did. Because even though I didn't trust them yet, even though forgiveness wasn't instant, that letter told me one thing I had been denied for most of my adult life: validation. A few days later, I emailed Madison. I told her I wouldn't be pressing further. The damage was done, but the war was over. Her reply was short. You did what most never find the courage to do. You didn't just walk away. You walked through it. I spent the next few months in reflection. I picked up hobbies I had long abandoned: painting, reading, cooking. I took solo hikes in Forest Park, met new friends, opened myself up to a life that didn't revolve around crisis management. I learned to say yes again, to people who didn't take, to things that filled me back up. And slowly I started to love again. Not them, not yet, but myself. Then one evening in early spring, my phone rang again. Not with need, not with obligation, just a name, Dad. I let it ring 4 times. Then I answered. Hi, I said. He cleared his throat. Hi. Silence. Then, I'm just calling to say, we miss you. That's all. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Okay, I replied quietly. Thank you for saying that. I hope we can talk again sometime. Maybe, I said. And maybe was honest. Maybe left the door open, but only if I wanted to walk through it. 'Cause for once the choice was mine. And that was the greatest freedom of all. My name is Ariana Bennett. And this is the story of how I lost my family and found myself. This wasn't just about money, or wills, or favoritism. This was about reclaiming identity from those who only saw utility. About walking away from a love that demanded erasure. And choosing finally to love myself, loudly, unapologetically, and on my own terms. Sometimes strength isn't staying silent. It's speaking up, so others know they aren't alone. If you've ever been the responsible one, the invisible support, the child who carried it all, let this be your reminder. You are not selfish for saying no. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for choosing peace over performance. You are allowed to take up space. You always were. Welcome to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more real, raw, and redemptive journeys like this one.